What if the longest, most difficult journey you will ever take in your entire life requires absolutely zero physical movement?
That is quite the hook.
Right. Today, we are looking at an ancient roadmap that claims, well, that you are already at your destination. You're just completely blind to it.
Yeah, it's a wild concept.
For you, the listener who wants to really grasp profound knowledge without, drowning in a sea of overwhelming information, we are doing a deep dive today into a fascinating text called the Jiva Yatra.
Which translates to the journey of the soul.
Exactly. It was written by Sri Janananda Parati, and we are zeroing in on just one incredibly dense piece of this source material, which is verse 5.
And it's arguably the pivotal verse in the entire text. I mean, if the Jiva Yatra is about reaching a state of ultimate eternal happiness.
What the text calls Nityananda, right?
Yes, exactly, Nityananda. Then verse 5 is the ultimate preparation guide. It's essentially the roadmap for the mind.
Because you can't exactly reach a cognitive destination with a physical suitcase, you have to pack the right mental gear.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, that premise flips the whole concept of a journey on its head.
It really does.
Like, if we aren't moving through space or time, what exactly are we traversing?
Well, that is the foundational question here. The text points out that if the destination is ultimate liberation or eternal bliss, and you are trying to reach it, you have to measure the distance.
But it's not spatial.
No, you can't take a train to get there. And it's not temporal either.
Okay.
You can't just sit in a chair for 20 years and automatically arrive. The distance being covered is purely ignorance.
Wow, okay.
Think of it like looking frantically for your keys in a dark room, only to realize, they've been in your pocket the whole time.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
Right. But the distance between you and the keys wasn't physical. It was just a lack of knowledge. And when the distance is ignorance, the only way to travel is through knowledge.
Which means the preparation for this journey is entirely about getting the human mind into a state where it can actually receive and process that knowledge.
Precisely. And verse 5 lays out 4 distinct steps to get the mind ready.
So the very first step, the absolute foundation of this roadmap, is called astikam, which is this deep-rooted faith in the Vedas.
Yes.
And logically, that makes perfect sense. I mean, you can't start a journey if you don't trust the map you've been handed.
We do have to be incredibly careful with the word faith here, though. The text uses the term shraddha, or astikam, and it carries a lot of baggage for a modern audience.
Right, because it explicitly does not mean blind faith.
Exactly. You are not checking your intellect at the door.
Which is how we usually translate it in the West, and it causes massive confusion. It makes it sound like you just have to, force yourself to believe something illogical.
Yeah, rather than a forced belief, astikam is an attitude. It's the cognitive stance of treating the Vedas, the ancient scriptures, as a primary source of knowledge.
Okay.
The technical term there is a pramanam. A primary source is something that is self-validating within its own specific field of inquiry.
The sources actually use a fantastic analogy for this that explains the mechanics perfectly. Think about your eyes and your ears.
Right, a great example.
Your eye is the primary instrument, the pramanam, for seeing form and color. But your ear is the primary instrument for hearing sound.
Yes.
You wouldn't use your ears to verify what your eyes are seeing. Like, you wouldn't stand in front of a tree and say, I refuse to believe these leaves are green until I can hear that they are green.
Because that is a fundamental misuse of the instrument. You are applying a valid tool to an invalid field of knowledge.
And the text argues that worldly science, logic, and our physical senses are the primary instruments for understanding the finite physical universe. They're excellent at that.
Oh, absolutely. They're essential.
But the Vedas are the primary instrument for revealing the infinite. So just like you don't use your ears to check your eyes, you shouldn't try to use a telescope or a mathematical equation to verify the Vedas' revelations about the eternal.
That's exactly it. Treating the text as a valid primary instrument in its own field, that is, astikam.
But what if someone just doesn't feel that faith? Let's say you read the text and you just don't have that trust. Do they fake it until they make it?
Well, the text takes a surprisingly pragmatic stance on this. It says, no, do not fake it.
Really? Just don't even try.
Yeah, if you don't have the proper attitude, the proper pavana towards the text, it is actually better to put it down and walk away.
Wow, that is refreshing.
Right. If you try to force it, you will constantly be trying to verify the infinite with finite instruments, which is exactly like trying to listen to the color green.
It would just generate immense psychological frustration. You'll basically waste your time arguing with the map.
Precisely. But if you cultivate astikam, If you accept the map as valid for the specific non-physical territory it covers, well, then you unlock the ability to take the first real step.
Okay, so I have the map, I have Astakiam, now I need to start walking.
Right into the training ground?
Exactly. For those of us who are not quite ready for the ultimate mind-bending leap of pure philosophical knowledge, verse 5 prescribes the training ground, which is karma yoga.
Engaging in action in the world?
But wait, if this whole deep dive is about reaching ultimate spiritual liberation, why is the text telling us to lean into our daily actions, jobs, and worldly ambitions?
That is the paradox, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the text talks about us being like rough rocks that need to be chiseled down to reveal the perfect sculpture inside. I get that analogy, but I don't see how working a 60-hour week on Wall Street chisels away my ego.
Or dealing with a terrible commute.
Right. Doesn't the corporate world usually inflate our egos or just burn us out? Why isn't the text telling us to retreat to a quiet cave to meditate?
Well, what's fascinating here is the distinction between the action itself and the psychology behind the action. Karma yoga isn't just, doing stuff.
Okay.
It is a highly specific psychological chisel used to chip away impurities, which the text calls mala. These impurities are things like anxiety, constant craving, anger, and ego.
So the Wall Street job itself isn't the problem.
No, working on Wall Street absolutely will inflate your ego or burn you out, but only if you are deeply attached to the outcome of your actions. If your entire sense of self-worth is tied to your year-end bonus, your cortisol levels are constantly spiking.
You are just in a permanent state of reaction.
Exactly. You're constantly reacting to wins and losses.
So how does karma yoga actually change that mechanism?
By entirely shifting where you place your focus. Karma yoga asks you to dedicate the action to a higher purpose, whether you conceptualize that as the Lord or simply the grander order of the universe.
And then what about the results of that action?
You gracefully accept whatever result comes back. When you genuinely let go of the obsessive need to control the outcome, you break the psychological loop of anxiety.
Oh, I see. You lower the cognitive load.
Exactly. You transition from having a stressed, constantly reacting mind, what the text calls a tantrum-throwing mind, into a serene, calm mind.
A tantrum-throwing mind. I love that phrase.
It's very accurate, isn't it?
It really is. And this brings us to one of my favorite concepts from the source material, which is the university of life.
Ah, yes. A brilliant concept.
The text points out that a tantrum-throwing mind learns absolutely nothing from reality. If you are constantly fighting the fact that you didn't get the promotion or that your car broke down, you are just complaining about the curriculum.
You're arguing with a teacher.
Exactly. You aren't learning.
A reactive mind is entirely consumed by its own narrative of how things should be. But a serene mind, the mind that has been sculpted by the practice of karma yoga, enters a state of objective observation.
It treats life as a classroom.
Yes, and biologically, neurologically even, a calm mind is the only kind of mind that can actually absorb new data, recognize patterns, and pass its exams in this university of life.
Which means karma yoga isn't about getting super attached to your worldly job. It's about using the inevitable friction of your worldly job as a gym.
That's a great way to put it.
You are using the difficult boss or the annoying commute to train your mind to remain steady. But wait, I have a pushback here.
Go for it.
If I get really, really good at karma yoga, I'm going to have a calm mind. I'm going to be learning from my mistakes. I'll probably become highly effective in the world, right?
Very likely, yes.
When I just become a highly effective, deeply calm materialist who still wants 3 sports cars and a mansion, how does this actually lead to spiritual liberation?
Well, that is the exact logical necessity that pushes us to the third gear in verse 5.
Okay, which is?
Nairasham, or Virajan.
Dispassion. Because you are absolutely right. If you stop at karma yoga, you might just end up as a very relaxed billionaire.
Which doesn't sound terrible, to be honest.
True, but the text assumes that a serene mind in the university of life is going to start noticing a very specific universal pattern.
What pattern?
That absolutely everything that has a beginning has an end. It is all asuthyar, meaning ephemeral or finite.
Ah, right.
By fully participating in life, by experiencing worldly pleasures, the karma yogi observes the mechanics of joy. The text even goes so far as to include experiencing heavenly realms, svarga. I'm really glad you brought up svarga because dropping the concept of heaven into this is usually a total record scratch moment for a Western audience.
Oh, definitely.
Because in the Vedic view, heaven isn't the eternal endpoint, right? It's just another temporary destination.
Correct. In this framework, Svarga is essentially a high-end vacation resort.
A resort in the clouds.
Basically, you do good deeds, you earn merit, you go to heaven and enjoy yourself. But eventually, your merit runs out, and you have to check out of the resort and come back down.
So it still has an end.
Yes, so even heaven is a grosthir, temporary. The joy derived from any of these temporary things is called anityananda. That translates to impermanent experiential joy.
And viragyam is the conscious, calculated decision to stop relying on anityananda for your ultimate fulfillment.
Because it's a terrible long-term investment.
Right. To invent an analogy here, relying on temporary joys for ultimate fulfillment is basically like trying to eat soup with a fork.
That is a very vivid image.
You are working incredibly hard. You are constantly bringing the fork to your mouth, and you are getting a tiny taste of a broth. It tastes good.
But you are burning way more calories than you are consuming.
Exactly. You will never, ever get full. Every vacation ends. Every great meal is over in an hour. Every promotion eventually just becomes your new, stressful baseline.
That captures the sheer exhaustion of it perfectly. And the source text actually uses an analogy of its own to drive this home.
Oh, yeah, I know the one you mean.
It's quite graphic, but it compares all temporary worldly gains to crow droppings. Kakavishta samana.
I laughed out loud when I read that in the sources. It is so extreme.
It definitely gets the point across.
It really does. But how do we actually apply that without becoming totally nihilistic? Like, if I just spent 10 years building a business and I have to view it as a crow dropping, doesn't that just make me incredibly depressed?
Well, if it makes you depressed, then you haven't actually developed a calm mind through karma yoga yet.
Oh, interesting.
It's crucial to understand that viragyam is not about hating the world or becoming cynical. Think about the crow dropping.
Okay.
If you see a crow dropping on your front porch, you don't get angry at it. You don't write a miserable philosophical essay about the meaninglessness of the porch.
No, you definitely don't.
You simply sweep it away because it has zero value to you. You're completely indifferent to it.
You don't brag to your neighbors about your immense willpower to avoid touching it either. It's just effortless detachment.
Yes, exactly. And that is the key. It is a massive shift in valuation.
So you still interact with the world, you still run your business.
Right. But you no longer demand that the business provides you with eternal, unshakable happiness because you know it physically cannot.
Yeah.
You stop asking the finite world to do an infinite job.
You stop eating soup with a fork. You drop the attachment to the temporary things because you see the pattern clearly.
That's Viraji.
But practically speaking, that leaves a massive void. If I stop caring deeply about the temporary successes and failures, what is left? What am I actually looking for?
And that brings us to the final piece of mental gear required by verse 5, which is nityantya viveka.
Discrimination.
Yes. This is the ultimate filter. It is the ability to clearly distinguish between what is eternal, which is nityam, and what is ephemeral, which is anityam.
So what does this all mean for the listener? How do you actually use this discrimination filter in daily life?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it circles all the way back to the dual nature of our tools that we discussed with Astikyam.
The eyes and the ears.
Exactly. All our worldly instruments of knowledge, our five senses, our intellect, our scientific methods, they're only capable of interacting with the finite, the anityam. Everything they measure is subject to time, space, and decay.
Because the tools themselves are subject to time, space, and decay. You can't measure the infinite with a ruler.
Exactly. So through the university of life and through the dispassion of viragyam, you realize the finite will never fully satisfy you. You've recognized the soup and the fork.
But how do you even know the infinite exists to be sought? How do you know there is a nityam to fill that void?
This is where your faith in the map pays off. The Veda is the only pramanam, the only instrument that reveals the eternal.
Ah, the schematic locks together.
It does.
You need the map to even know the destination exists because your physical eyes and ears will never find it for you.
Viveka is possessing that crystal clear clarity. It's recognizing that the world offers the temporary and the map points to the eternal.
So you are no longer confused about where to look for lasting peace.
Never again. And the payoff here is profound. The text explains that once a person has mastered these 4 steps, they are fundamentally transformed.
So once they have the attitude of faith in the primary source, they perform dedicated action to chisel away their psychological impurities.
Right.
They develop an effortless dispassion for temporary outcomes, and they can clearly discriminate between the finite and the infinite.
Exactly. They aren't just wandering around in the dark anymore.
They have packed the right mental gear.
They are now a mature student.
Yo.
In the Vedic tradition, they are officially qualified for the direct path to liberation, what the text calls Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge.
They're finally ready to approach a teacher.
Yes, to delve into the deepest philosophical truths and uncover reality without their ego, their anxiety, or their worldly cravings getting in the way.
It's an incredibly brilliant, logical progression when you look at the mechanics of it. Verse 5 isn't just a list of spiritual buzzwords, it's an engineering schematic for human psychology.
It really is a complete self-sustaining system for rewiring how your brain interacts with reality.
Let's recap how this flows real quick. First, you trust the map, Asticam.
Yep.
Second, you do the work in your daily life to lower your cognitive load and chisel away the ego, karma yoga.
Exactly.
Third, you realize that the temporary world, no matter how shiny, is just soup on a fork that will never permanently fulfill you, Barajiam.
Right.
And finally, you learn to spot the exact difference between the eternal truth and the passing illusion, Viveka.
That's the formula.
And connecting this directly to you, the listener, think about how intensely practical this is. Whether you are prepping for a stressful board meeting, navigating a difficult relationship, or just trying to find a moment of peace in a chaotic world.
Applying these 4 steps changes the game entirely.
It really does. You aren't just enduring a stressful Tuesday. You are using that meeting, that argument, as your karma yoga. You are using the friction to chisel your mind into a state of serenity.
You are turning everyday stress into a spiritual training ground.
You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being an active student of them.
Beautifully said.
And the destination that this preparation is leading toward. This is where the jiva yatra leaves us with a thought that is just completely paradigm shifting.
It truly is. If we go back to the text's definition of this journey, remember, the distance being covered is purely ignorance.
Right. The keys were in our pocket the whole time.
Exactly. And the ultimate destination, that eternal bliss or moksha the text reveals, is actually your own true nature.
Wow.
It is who you fundamentally are beneath the rough rock of the ego and the anxiety. The destination is you.
Which leaves us with a final thought to mull over today, something that builds on this profound realization.
Go ahead.
If the ultimate destination is already your true nature, and the only distance between you and that destination is your own ignorance, what happens to your fear of failure?
That's a great question.
We spend so much of our lives terrified of missing out, of taking the wrong path, of not achieving enough in the physical world.
Constantly.
But if the greatest, most profound destination you will ever reach is already permanently secured inside you, completely untouched by your worldly successes or failures, maybe the stakes of our daily anxieties aren't nearly as high as we think they are.
It completely neutralizes the fear. You realize you are never actually at risk of losing yourself.
You don't need to pack a single bag. You just need to clear your eyes, trust the map, and wake up to who you already are.
Perfectly said.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.